Hello and welcome to those just joining. Welcome to Successful Work Transitions webinar and Q&A. We're just giving people a couple more minutes to allow them to register to get into the webinar. In the meantime, please use the comment and chat function or private chat function if you'd prefer, just to share with me what work transition is currently on your mind or a challenge around change at work that you'd like to share so that I can tailor this for you and also answer any questions. So we've got a message here. It's my first week back at work after mat leave. Congratulations. So looking forward to hearing all your tips regarding work transitions. Oh, you're welcome. So hopefully it'll be really actionable today. I've had some really good feedback that it's given people lots to think about. So hopefully it will for you too. Got a private message come in here. I'm wondering how to do it well and make good choices. Yeah, absolutely. It can be really stressful going through a work transition and you know that you need to optimize it, but you're thinking, how do I do that? How do I make choices that are right for me when there's so much change going on and so many opinions? How do I actually ground myself in me and what I want from this? Absolutely, we'll be covering that today. Oh, and another one come in. Managing expectations when you're getting up to speed. Yeah, that's another really tricky one. Managing expectations is one of the biggest things that I see go wrong when it comes to work transitions. There are so many assumptions flying around. People are moving at great pace that clarity is missed in all of that. So taking control of managing expectations is really important. I will touch on that today, but I'll also come back to that at the end for you. So hello and welcome. Please do use the comment section and the private chat either to ask questions as we go through or to share with me what work transition is on your mind right now. So today I'm going to talk about why focusing on work transitions is important. We're going to talk about the key elements for successful work transitions. And I'm going to share with you some anonymized client stories just to give you a feel for you're not alone, but also how people can be supported through these things. There will unsurprisingly be a plug for what I do, so please bear with me. And there'll be a Q&A at the end, but please do ask questions as we go through. And if I can answer them there and then I will. If not, I'll come back to it at the end. So please keep sharing with me what work transitions are on your mind right now. In the chat function. So what do we mean when we're talking about work transitions? Well, technically it means, moving from one period or state into another, right? So it could be anything from a change in work hours to promotion, returning from leave, be that mat leave in this circumstance, or it could be sabbatical, or it could be sick leave. It could be career change, a new contract, moving country, moving company, could be redundancy, change in responsibility, a management change or a culture change. Loads and loads of work transitions, some bigger than others, and some have a bigger effect than others. So I'm going to share my slides with you now. Oops, it's no good starting at the end, is it? But you will smash that work transition. So I work with loads of people on work transitions. It's a real sweet spot for me, and I'll explain why in a second. But here's why work transitions are tough. People underestimate the difficulties of change. I've put even positive change here, but I actually mean especially positive change, because we get really excited about change, say something like a promotion, and then we sort of fail to realize then that there's so much work that we need to do behind it and the support that we need. So that's massively underestimated. People are expected to manage everything alone. And I think that gets worse the more senior and advanced in your career you get, because people go, oh, you've done this a million times before. You may have, but you may not have. So there are a lot of assumptions around these things. But I think often we feel like we can't share that something is tough, or we feel like we should be expected to be really excited and positive about it, even though it's tough. Going through any kind of change is a really busy time. So we end up rushing through this change, partly because it's busy, but also partly because we just want to get through it and get to the other side where we want to be. But that can sometimes mean we feel overwhelmed by the lack of time to reflect, plan, and adjust to optimize this change for ourselves. Change always throws up confidence wobbles, totally normal. And it's also normal to want to reach out to friends, family, colleagues for support and advice. But that then does sometimes mean you can feel frustrated by the lack of new perspectives or actually actionable ideas that come from that. Because usually these people are really well meaning. They'll often jump in with advice even when you're not necessarily asking for it. So it's not always the best way to get the support that you need. So who am I? Hello, for those that don't know me, I'm Anne Harrod Ross, and I've got first-hand experience of this stuff because I've got over 16 years leadership experience in big global corporates like Johnson & Johnson and Reckitt. And I worked out in that time, I had over 15 work transitions. Now, some of those were smaller than others, an evolution of a role or a new team member. And some of them were really big, changing company, or the day I found out I was responsible for countries I'd never even been to. But of course, there was no travel budget to go and get to know all of them. Just go to one or two. They're all pretty similar. And I realized that, especially as I got more senior, that there just wasn't the support for work transitions that I actually needed to do it really well. People were like, oh, you're going to be great. And you've been promoted for a reason. Awesome, crack on. But that's actually really hard, and it's not what people need when they go through work transitions. So now I've qualified as an executive coach, and I'm accredited senior practitioner with the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. That essentially means I'm professionalized. I stick to certain ethics. And I now provide the support that I wish I'd had in those days with those 15 work transitions. And for anybody who knows me, there are a couple of people on this call who've worked with me. I am not your stereotypical coach. I don't have an HR background. I have a commercial leadership background, and I'm quite direct. So those of you that are into personality profiling and all those kinds of things, which I totally am, I'm a qualified DISC practitioner as well, is I am an ENTJ for Myers-Briggs lovers. For insights color profiling, I am blue, red, green, yellow. And for DISC, I am a DC. So I'm quite direct, I'm quite challenging, I'm quite analytical. And I combine that with my now coaching qualifications and experience to give really quite a rounded, challenging, but also supportive environment for people to do their best thinking, particularly when it comes to work transitions, which I'm super passionate about. So why is it so important to focus on successful work transitions? And why do I pull my hair out that organizations don't provide more support for them? One of the big things is that it's such a great opportunity to steer your own ship. It's an opportunity for growth. Not just professional growth and resetting careers, but personal growth. Whether we manage these well or not can affect long-term progress and success. But there's a super narrow window for success in these because change is happening so quickly. So acting quickly on that gives you a much better shot at future success and staying ahead. And there's loads of research that shows that those who start managing change much quicker and earlier are more successful in managing that change for the longer term. This is a picture of me and my husband kayaking. Anybody who's been kayaking, maybe you love the outdoors as much as I do, will know that the person at the front is responsible for the kind of power and the pace and the momentum. And the one at the back is responsible for the steering. And when it comes to our careers and navigating work transitions, you've got to do both. So you need 4 hands, you need 4 pedals, and it is a lot, but it is worth it. The next reason why it's important to focus on successful work transitions is that change and making big decisions can lead to loads of anxiety and frustration, even when it's positive change. And that's because a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is essentially the bit of the brain that is to help keep us safe. You know, it's the one that sort of goes, that rustling in the bushes, let's assume that's a lion and be prepared for that and get into fight or flight mode. It likes stability and it likes predictability. So when we don't have those things, that part of the brain goes into overdrive because it's constantly looking to find stability that's not there. And it's constantly assuming there's a lion in the bush, because that part of the brain is wired for physical safety, but also emotional and psychological safety. So we do get fight or flight, even in emotional, psychological situations, not just physical situations. And these feelings of anxiety and frustration can escalate and affect both our personal well-being and our professional performance. And that's why sometimes people adjusting to change can take way longer than it needed to and could be way more painful than it needed to. But taking immediate action on these to lift those negative emotions makes your transition smoother, more enjoyable, and way more productive. But if people delay that action and that little window that you've got to absolutely maximize it, it can result in that prolonged stress, decreased job satisfaction, and a lot of people coming to me saying that they've lost their mojo. And I have also businesses come to me sometimes saying this person's been in role a year, they're not performing, and it's because they haven't been given the support and they didn't act quickly enough. And the third reason why successful work transitions are really important is confidence. As our careers progress, the expectation of confidence and control increases. We're expected to be the swan pedaling underneath, even more so. And it's harder to share when you're not necessarily feeling 100% confident. I remember when I stepped into my first business unit head role, and I remember feeling quite overwhelmed. And it was just that I wanted to share that with my manager at the time. So I said, it's a lot, isn't it? And they were like, look, you're senior now. You just got to get on with it. And if you can't hack it, there are 10 people behind you who want this role. So just get on. And at that moment, I realized we were never going to be talking about emotions again. And I had to find my support elsewhere because that person was not going to be helpful for my confidence. Some of these wobbles of confidence can make us feel like an imposter. And losing that confidence can be crippling if it's not dealt with. You end up in this kind of vicious spiral. So dealing with it as soon as possible is vital to stop you holding yourself back. And delaying that action can mean you lose credibility because people start to notice that, don't they? They notice that feeling of lack of control or flip-flopping on decisions. And they feel your frustration. And you don't want to be overlooked for opportunities like your next promotion. So confidence is super important. So doing all of these things, steering your own ship, making sure that you're in a great position for confidence is why you're here today. I forgot to share my little story. I wanted to explain this picture. You're probably thinking, what on earth is that picture on, Harrod? I wanted to share this with you because when I went on sabbatical, I trained to be a gym instructor for fun. And when I turned up for the practical days, there were all these super fit, really like slim, strong people. And I was like, oh my goodness, I am not like them. And you know what? They were the most welcoming people. And I did all of the same stuff they did. I passed my qualification just as well as they did. And if I'd let those imposter feelings get to me, I wouldn't now have this great thing that I now have in my life. Every Thursday night, I teach women to lift weights. And so it's so important to keep that confidence and resilience high in order to give ourselves the opportunities that we want in life and at work. So now we're moving on to doing this successfully. You might be familiar with this. This is the Kubler-Ross change curve, no relation. This was actually originally designed based on people's experience of grief. And grief is one of the toughest change any human can go through, right? But researchers have noticed in the, 40, 50 years since this was developed, that actually every change follows this curve to a greater or lesser degree, to a shorter or longer period. And how successfully and quickly you get along this curve and pop out the other end into that integration phase is down to you and the actions that you take. So there are 4 key elements to successful work transitions: clarity, reflection, preparation, and support. I almost see these as stages: clarity 1, reflection 2, preparation 3, and underpinning all of them needs to be the right kind of support. So I'm now going to go through each of these one by one. So firstly, clarity. There are 3 important clarity factors for successful transitions. That's mindset, resilience, and proactivity. Let's start with mindset. So many people lack the confidence and self-belief to have successful work transitions, and nobody talks about it. But all these imposter feelings are coming up, limiting beliefs, stopping us moving forwards, making all these assumptions about ourselves and our environment. And because our brain is constantly looking for this stability, you're actually more open to being influenced by others than you would normally. And that can also sometimes make you feel you've got too many opinions, too much advice around, that's limiting your ability to do this well. But having the right mindset means you can spot opportunities, handle those challenges, be proactive, keep your confidence high, reduce the insecurity and self-doubt, and increase motivation. Without it, you can spiral into these imposter feelings, limiting beliefs, which can affect your credibility, how you feel at work, and whether you actually feel like this change was worth it. So for the right work transition mindset, firstly, you have to understand your current mindset. Where are you now? What are you thinking and feeling? And what are those emotional responses and triggers that are kind of setting you off right now? You then have to unpack the barriers stopping you from getting to the successful mindset that you need for work transitions. You then need to develop more helpful thoughts to keep that cycle of positivity and that growth mindset. Focus on positivity, but not to the point of it being toxic, right? You need to be in a positive place, but not to a point where you're sort of steamrolling yourself. And then you have to explore and experiment ways to take control of your own situation and move forward in the direction that you want to. The next condition for clarity is resilience. Change is tough. There is no denying it. It uses a lot of energy, not just emotional energy, but that amygdala bit of the brain I was telling you about that's constantly searching for stability when there isn't any or there's less, technically actually genuinely uses a lot more energy in your body. That's why you're tired after a training course, or you're tired when you're going through a lot of change, because your brain is actually needing more from you in order to get through it. There's this fear from uncertainty, so constantly kind of feeling that sort of maybe bubbling low-level anxiety. And change can be demotivating and frustrating, even when it's positive, because I hear a lot of people saying to me, just not getting to where I want to be with this fast enough. Lots of people end up with lower resilience because they're run down by previous toxic situations or people. Change has already thrown them, or they've had change after change after change, or having to make really big decisions that's weighing on their minds. But resilience is so important because it strengthens your ability to handle these emotional challenges, helps maintain that positive outlook, and it reduces stress because it calms that bit of the brain down. So to build up resilience, I work with my clients on identifying those unhelpful things that they're telling themselves that is draining their resilience. Or it might be messages they've absorbed from a previous toxic workplace or person, and reframe those things that they tell themselves. What story are you telling yourself, and what story do you need to tell yourself, and what's actually true? Pinpoint what's helping and hindering the building of resilience, and then exploring coping strategies that work for them in particular, because everybody's different, and relight that fire. And the third clarity condition for successful work transitions is proactivity. As an ex-hiring manager, I would say proactivity was the number one thing I was looking for in any new team member. It is the major differentiator between successful and unsuccessful transitions as well. Taking charge of your own situation gives you control over your own career and life. It helps you clarify what you in particular need and want from it, and it genuinely gives you a competitive advantage over your peers. If I saw someone being proactive about a change, I was always really impressed. But if you wait for clarity to be given to you, or wait for this situation to improve, you can just stall yourself and just make yourself feel worse for longer. Being proactive does rely on that mindset and resilience work having been done, because that's the stuff that gives you the strength to then grab the bull by the horns. You then need to define your own values and goals. What do I want out of this situation? Whether this situation happened to you or you created it, how do you want to be at the end of it? Then you need to figure out how to get the info or connections you need to get yourself from A to B. Understand the controllables, because you can't control everything, and be okay with what you can't control. I realize this is all very much easier said than done. So I wanted to share with you Sarah's story of a mindset shift, obviously not her real name. So Sarah was a senior leader in the data industry, and she just landed a new job. And she'd been seeking a new job because she'd been in a super toxic workplace previously, really struggling to get on with her manager. They just knocked her confidence and knocked her confidence and knocked her confidence. So she was super excited about this new job, but the stress and the confidence knocks from that previous experience left her doubting her skills and ability. And she just wasn't feeling as positive about this new job as she wanted to. Plus, this new job had more days in the office and a long. And that's often the case, isn't it? When something changes at work, it's rarely in isolation. You usually find it impacts another part of your life, doesn't it? And she was preparing on her own for this role. She was reading books and articles, but it just wasn't enough to make her feel positive and like herself again. So she came to me, and I helped her become more confident by identifying the roots of this self-doubt. What things had she been told, or was she telling herself, that was making her doubt herself? And we focused on her strengths. There is loads of research out there that shows if we focus on our strengths, we make way more successful. I created this quiet, dedicated space for exploration and reflection for her, because she had a super busy home and work life. You'll know when you go through any work transition, right? It's really busy. So taking the time out to actually think about it is not so easy. But slowly, she began to trust her abilities again. And she came up with some great ways that were right for her and her family to balance the demands of her new routine and home life. And quite quickly, she started to get those quick wins. She was exceeding expectations, and she quickly became a trusted leader in her new organization. It was like seeing a different person to the one who originally came to me. Wonderful to see. So hopefully that if you've been in a situation like that or have experienced that, you realize you're not alone. So we've talked about clarity. The next key area for successful work transitions is reflection. And there are two essential conditions for reflection for successful transitions. That is time to think and digging deep. So let's start with time to think. Oops, I've gone too far. I don't know. Oh, we're having a slide issue. We'll give it a minute. Anyway, if I had £1 for every time somebody came to me and said, I just don't have the time to think, I'm too busy to think, I keep putting time in my diary to think and it doesn't happen, I would be very rich. I'm just getting my paper slides out so I don't lose track of where I am now if we're having a few technical issues. But failing to create the time to think means that you end up rushing decisions. It means that you're feeling more stressed. And it sometimes means that the actions that you're taking are not aligned with your goals. I often get people who don't even know what their goals are. They're just kind of rushing through something and feeling it's all a bit chaotic. And that's why I make sure that sessions with me are thinking appointments. It's funny, actually, very rarely do people rearrange appointments. And I think that's because they're like, no, it's accountability. I have to have the thinking time. And it means that these are convenient, they're booked in advance, and you block everything else out and create the right environment for that person so they can do their best thinking. They're also safe spaces for emotions where there's zero judgment. I get a lot of tears in sessions and stuff, and that's totally okay, because sometimes this stuff is really tough and you've got to let it out somewhere. Making physical time to think with somebody objective is it's 100% focused on the individual, and I'm always in their corner no matter what is going on for them in their life and their organization. The second condition for reflection is digging deep. Digging deep means recognizing the roots of your thoughts and feelings. And it's really important for overcoming these obstacles as they come up. Addressing underlying issues. Change can throw up sometimes some stuff that we thought we had under control. I always describe myself as a recovering perfectionist. The reality is I'm always going to be recovering, I think. But I notice when I'm put under pressure, or that lots of things are changing around me, that it's like my brain anchors in on that for me. And it's almost like I have to control something, so I'm going to control everything. That's a real danger zone for me. And I have to get back to, hang on, what's causing this? Where's that coming from? This is a desire for me to control as much as possible. How do I feel less like that? And then you can experiment and develop strategies to help deal with those underlying issues once you actually know what's causing them, and move forward authentically for you. Because everybody is different. So what's the right way for you? Without this understanding of actually digging deep and going, hang on, what's actually driving this right now? What is going on for me? People can get stuck in these repetitive loops of thinking patterns. They feel frustrated. They can't make meaningful progress and move forwards. And it genuinely hinders their development because they keep coming back to the same issues. And I'm sure everybody has those one or two development challenges that they always keep coming back to. And when something big changes, it does often rear its ugly head. My need for detail comes through as well when I'm stressed or going through change. Having self-awareness is already a great start, but really understanding what's going on underneath it is even better, to be able to actually, fixing's the wrong word, because I don't think anybody should be fixed, but to be able to manage it in a way that is going to help your life. So together with my clients, I help them uncover those underlying beliefs, the experiences that they've had that are maybe shaping or triggering them, and get new insights into themselves that they wouldn't necessarily have got on their own, and use strategies that they've developed themselves to grow. I listen really deeply. And I thought I was always a good listener, as people used to say to me, "Oh, Harriet, you're a great listener." And when I was a manager, I went on every coaching course that my businesses offered me. And I was like, I'm a really great listener. And when I trained to be a coach, I was like, oh, wow, no, there is a next level of listening. There really is. And it is much deeper around the words that people are using, noticing little shifts in body language, and almost holding up a mirror to people to see things that they wouldn't normally see themselves, noticing contradictions, sharing things that I'm noticing, the little things, but actually sometimes are key to a big thing. And I ask challenging questions, because without the challenging questions and somebody really making you face into stuff, you often avoid it, don't you? I know I do. I have my own coach and a supervisor because it's very important to keep on top of this stuff. Those challenging questions are so important to move forwards. So I want to share with you David's story. So this is David and how he had some aha moments. Where's my David story? So David had a new role, and he was at a much bigger global company now than before. And initially, super confident, super positive, but he found himself coming up against unexpected challenges quite quickly. He was struggling to connect with his manager. They just did not understand each other. They were not communicating well. He felt overwhelmed by the high expectations, the sheer volume of opportunities, because it was one of these new roles where you get the opportunity to shape the role, which essentially means nobody really knows what it is yet. You need to go and figure out what's needed and make this role really effective for it, right? I'm sure we've all had one of those opportunities. Emotionally, he felt super isolated and frustrated because he couldn't talk to his manager. There weren't really many other people in his organization that he could share this with, because he was like, I'm now quite senior and I don't want people to think that I can't handle this. So he's keeping it to himself and trying to go it alone. And this led to loads of self-doubt. And also, he was also a recovering perfectionist. And these perfectionism urges were really starting to come up. So handling everything on his own and believing that just working harder and longer hours and being more perfect would help him overcome his problems was just making everything worse for him. And he was in not a great way when we first started working together. So I helped him understand what was and wasn't working, because there was actually some really good stuff going on. We really focused on his new manager, but we actually started to focus on how he could see him differently. And then that started to unlock better conversations, better curiosity, more kindness, better communication. We understood where his perfection was coming from. It actually went quite back to his childhood. We're not talking counselling here, that's not what I do. But he noticed that actually his relationship with his brother was actually where part of this kind of competitive perfectionism urge was coming from. And that he didn't need that in this situation. It wasn't helpful for him. He came up with a load of great strategies to try. Some worked, some didn't, but he started to build a toolkit of things that were going to work for him in this situation. Things improved with his manager loads. He was getting those perfectionism urges better under control, realizing when they were helpful and when they were not helpful for him, and managed the imposter feelings that start to come up. He did deserve to be there. He was doing some great stuff. He knew that when he started to focus on it. So he improved his relationship with his manager. He set better boundaries, felt more secure, connected, supported and capable, and he had more time for activities outside of work, which then just made him just generally healthier and in a much better place and more resilient. So that's David's story. So we talked about clarity, reflection. Now I want to talk about preparation. Most people don't prepare and plan thoroughly enough for most things, but especially change. Reflect yourself with all honesty. How much prep have you done before changing companies even? That is a massive change. A lot of people are so focused on wrapping up their handovers and exiting a company, they might then take a week's holiday and they're just like, oh. And then they hit the ground running on day one. It's all, Research has shown that people who are starting a new role, those that start before day one, have significantly increased chances of success in their new role. So feeling prepared and having a plan not only gives you control, but it gives you confidence from day one of this change that others will notice and feel. It connects really nicely in with that proactivity point I made earlier. People can see it. But without preparation, you lose time. You lose credibility if you're on the back foot, and you can make poorer decisions because everything's just moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So in terms of preparation, I love preparation. I am a naturally detailed, structured person, which I have got under control. But I know that not everybody is. So I help people figure out what they need to prepare for. Those that love preparation will always go above and beyond, right? But what are the essentials to prepare for? How best to go about it for them, because everybody is different. And what is the natural next step for getting it done? The whole point of coaching is getting from A to B. Things don't always go to plan, and that's totally fine. I used to say to people on my team when we were talking about, careers and things, you don't need some great 5-year plan. If you do, that's brilliant, but most people don't. But if you have a direction that you're pointing yourself in and a focus and something you can be deliberate on, you're much more likely to be successful than just sort of floating around. And if that direction changes, that's okay, because you can then focus on that direction. I remember at one point I was sort of waiting for a promotion. The business had said to me, yeah, you're ready. You're definitely the next person, but there aren't any roles. So in the meantime, do you kind of want to shift across functions for a bit? And I was like, oh, no, because I've been waiting for this promotion. That would be a sideways move. It would take me longer. But I felt a bit pressured into it, if I'm honest. And I thought, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I'll try and look enthusiastic about it. Turns out I loved it and I was really good at that function. And it actually was some of my favorite times in my career. And it actually accelerated my career because the skills and things I learned in that period meant I skipped a level in the other function and then came back in with a much better rounded skill set, which massively put me in a better position for leadership roles in the future. So that change of direction and not being too wedded to an exact plan changed the trajectory of my career, and I definitely wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't said yes to that. So here's Claire's story. Again, obviously not Claire, but Claire's story. She was a senior manager in a marketing firm, and she discovered that a restructure meant her role had changed. It meant the role was going to become less enjoyable and lacking in the development opportunities that she needed. She described it as they're taking all the fun stuff away. Claire hated planning. She just didn't think that way. It made her feel stuck, uncertain, but she was frustrated she wasn't making the time to plan her next career move and redefine her development plan in this new situation she found herself in. So she'd spoken to her mentor, but they told her what she already knew, which was just that she needed to work out what she wanted and make a plan to get it. And she's like, yeah, but how do I do that? So she kept getting stuck in this same loop of thinking. So to make a well-informed career decision, because she did want to stay, but she was like, I'm open to leaving if that is what I need to do. She wanted to make a well-informed career decision here and a future plan. We started right at the beginning. We explored her values, her goals, and her options, where she was now, and if she left. She really clarified her true wants and needs in a space that wasn't being influenced by anybody else. And that led to some really authentic decision making. She was able to double check that she did actually want to stay. There was enough to keep her there. She challenged some hidden assumptions about what this situation meant. And actually, there may be more fun in this role than she'd realised. She was able to boost her confidence in her decision because she'd spent the proper time thinking about it, planning and putting a little bit of structure in place on it. And she actually broke the planning down into manageable steps, and we kind of did it together. Post-it notes, colourful pens, that's what she was into, and making the time on a call to do all of that together really helped her break it down into things that felt bite-sized. We actually ended up exploring her dislike for planning a little bit as well and managed to overcome some of the things making her feel a bit ick about it. And then we experimented with her approach going forwards. Not only did she make a really confident career decision, but she created a development plan to communicate these needs back to her company and explain why she was really struggling with this change and what specifically needed to be different to inject more fun and development opportunities back into that role for her. Not only did she just rediscover her career mojo and her own enthusiasm and confidence around this, but she got nearly everything on that list because she was super clear, super specific, and she made the best of the situation where they clearly wanted to keep her. She clearly wanted to stay. They just needed to negotiate the terms. She felt clearer, calmer, and more confident in that decision. And I think, as far as I'm aware, that was about a year ago. I think she's still there. So that's always a good sign. So that's Claire's story of somebody who didn't like planning actually ending up getting in a place where they were super confident in some kind of plan to move forwards. So we've talked about clarity. First thing we've got to do in any successful work transition, reflection and preparation. And next, I'm going to talk about support that sits underneath all of that, because it's super hard to do all this stuff on our own. Most people lack the support necessary to handle change. Organizations just don't provide it. I mean, it's nuts. I speak to quite a lot of HR people selling my wares, and they're like, we know all the stats around how hard work transitions are. Yet we just don't really do so much about it because nobody is really shouting very loudly about it. And that's for all the reasons we spoke about. There's a lot of anxiety, fear, worries about credibility. We don't want to be showing it. And that's why too many people go it alone and don't reach out for the support that they need. But having the right support removes those feelings of isolation, provides reassurance that, yes, you're on the right track for you because you've done the due diligence of the thinking and the planning and the clarity. And it helps maintain that emotional balance that you need to be moving through a transition quickly, effectively, and positively. I'd always talk about two types of support that are essential for successful work transitions: internal and external. So, what do I mean by those? So, internal means within your organization and within your kind of world, your friends, your family. Friends and family are so important when going through a work transition. Their love and unconditional support means they actually look at transitions much more from a personal happiness perspective. I remember when I finished the Reckitt graduate scheme and I had to choose between sales and marketing. I remember talking it through with my then boyfriend, and he had an interesting insight. He was like, "You were much happier when you were in sales." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that." And he shared his observations around how I was when I was working in the different departments, and that was partly why I chose sales, not the only reason. But it was really interesting to hear his perspective on that. Co-workers, managers, and mentors understand your workplace really, really well. They're useful for getting feedback and for hearing different experiences, but they are their experiences. So both of these groups really important, definitely need to have them, but they're not enough alone because they're absolutely packed full of biases, and they will always want, well, friends and family will always want the best for you. Co-workers might always seem that way, but they've often always got their own agenda. There's a lot of politics involved there. So when you're speaking to these people, just be really mindful of those things and make sure that you are looking at it as objectively as you can. And that's where external support comes in, like coaching, because objectivity and confidentiality are actually really hard to come by when it comes to talking to friends and family, co-workers, managers, and mentors, particularly objectivity. But they're actually thinking game changers because confidentiality means you can share anything. And you can say it in any way you like. It doesn't have to be dressed up, and there is no judgment, and there is absolutely nothing said anywhere else. And objectivity means there's no bias to it. That person is 100% in your corner, just focused on you. They're not thinking about whether your move to the next level is going to leave them with a gap on their team. So actually, they'd rather you didn't until 6 months' time. It's all completely objective. So working one-to-one with an experienced, qualified and accredited coach, and it's super important that people are qualified and accredited. There are so many cowboys out there. It helps you challenge your own thinking, find new perspectives, and keep on track. So how do you get the support that you need then? So internal support, do share how you're feeling with selected friends and family. We all have that person in our friendship group or family that is a bit negative or drains us a little bit. Yet don't hang out with them when you're going through change. They will drag you down. It is not helpful. So be mindful of who you choose to spend time with when you're going through change and who you share what with, so that you can actually get helpful stuff and not be dragged down. And that also applies to people in your organization. Do consider what support, if any, might be available, and identify just one or two co-workers, manager, mentor. Don't overdo it because you get too many opinions, too many experiences. And then the final point, this is the bit that people often miss, is actually set tangible objectives for each interaction you want to have, and be mindful of biases in advance before you have that conversation so that you can absolutely get the most out of it. And then consider external support as well to go with that, because that internal support is not enough and it's really hard to see it objectively. So identify a coach who's experienced in this area, check they're qualified and accredited, book a complimentary discovery call, prepare questions for it, and work with someone you can open up to. Research has shown that 40% of the outcome from any kind of therapeutic interaction, that be that counseling or therapy or coaching, is down to the relationship that you build with the other person. So it's super important. So zooming back out then, if I had to just say 3 top things for successful work transitions, it is 1, be proactive, take control of your own career and your own life, because other people are not going to do it for you. Be mindful of who you spend time with and who you talk to. Your brain is in an unstable state, if you like. It can really impact you. And finally, get support and get it early. Navigating change, making decisions is not easy, and you're not alone if you recognize that. It takes energy, proactivity, and loads of support to maximize it. And that's where one-to-one with coaching with me is a solution that includes the 4 things that I see are most missing from successful work transitions. That confidentiality and objectivity, the appropriate level of challenge, dedicated time for thinking and reflection, and encouraging to dig deep and actually deal with the root of stuff. And that's why I do at the beginning, like I kind of weekly 10 days sessions, and then sort of every other week, confidential 1-hour sessions in the diary for accountability at times that suit people. I provide information in advance on how to prepare for sessions. I get quite a lot of people coming to me that have never had sort of pure coaching before, don't know how to get the most out of their investment. And I operate on a 100% autonomy. Like I said, I'm not necessarily your typical coach. I am quite direct, and I truly believe that you need to take responsibility for your own development. So I don't take notes, and I don't typically set homework. Sometimes I've got some prep work for some sorts of things that I do with people. But you can ask for it. Like, I'm in the service of the person in front of me. And I also have had a few neurodivergent clients who just like me to keep a couple of top line notes, send them some bullet points, or record sessions. So whatever people need, I'll do it, of course. But I really, truly believe that people need to take their own notes, set their own homework, and move themselves forward. So how does it work? So you can book a free online context call via my website, via this QR code, or risecmc.uk. We have a 45-minute chat about what's on your mind, where do you want to get to, a little bit about me and how I might be able to help, getting to know each other, really. On the back of that, if it's something that you're interested in, then you get a tailored quote specifically for your situation. How many hours is appropriate to get you from where you are now to where you want to be? What could the rough timings look like? And then, assuming you want to go ahead with it, we bat around a few dates, get your first online session in. I usually have availability within a couple of weeks, and book your first online session with me and start the work. So these online context calls are completely free, and there's absolutely no obligation. It's a great opportunity to talk more about anything we've spoken about today in a private setting. So please do take advantage of that if you'd like to. Anybody that has stayed thus far, thank you for bearing with me on my pitch. You do get a free 1-hour accountability session 6 months after completing your coaching program with me if you invest in one. You just need to quote the offer in your free context call if that's something you'd like me to add into your personalized quote. And this is really great because people end their program, they're feeling on a high, it's great, they've made loads of progress, they're going to be doing all these things differently, and they do for a while, but sometimes some things start to slip, right? So it's just a good accountability. How are you getting on with it? What's worked well? What hasn't? What do you need to do differently to keep that momentum? So it's a great opportunity, and it's normally worth £275. My current availability is tight, partly because I'm going on holiday at the end of next week, going to Menorca for a bit of sunshine. So there are only 2 slots left to start working with me this month. So if you are interested in taking advantage of the free call with me, then please book before Thursday afternoon. Well, I've got availability until Thursday afternoon. You can see via this QR code, you can see my availability live and book at a time that suits you. And then I'm only away for a week, and then I'm back just after bank holiday. So hopefully that's given you some things to think about. And Maria, hopefully you got some tips that you wanted for your return. But you absolutely have in you the ability to go and smash that transition. And now hopefully you've also got a few more things to think about to maximize it. So I'm now going to move on to Q&A. So please use the comment section or private chat if you'd like to ask questions or share a reflection. What stood out for you the most today on the call that you are going to go away and either action or reflect upon? So please use the chat. Any questions? reflections, things you'd like to share, situations you'd like to share, please use the chat. And also come back to a couple of the situations people shared at the beginning and talk about that in a little bit as well. So please use the comments section. What questions would you like to ask me? Or what have you found most useful and you'd like to take away from this today? I'll give you a few seconds to think. So I'm going to come to some of the situations while people are doing that, the people shared at the beginning. So we had first week back after mat leave. That's it's a massive transition. Your life must have changed hugely, and your attitude and mindset towards work is also possibly quite different. And I think that's where balancing some of those feelings, it must be very difficult as well, like leaving the little person at home and going back into focusing about work. What are you feeling most excited and positive about that you want to dial up? What are the things you're finding most challenging and why? And then what do you need to do differently on those things in order to be able to move forward? So think about focusing on that clarity bit. What do you need to be strong, resilient, and how can you be proactive in that situation? Then think about reflection. How do I carve out some time for myself? Very difficult when you are coming back from mat leave to find time. That again is why I recommend booking in time with somebody. Find the time to make sure that you're thinking about these things. And what do you want from your career now? Has anything shifted? I often saw as a manager when people came back from mat leave that they maybe wanted something different from their career now. What does the development plan look like for you now in this world? Now, your first week back, let's not get to that yet. Firstly, get you through the transition now, and then how do you want to think about it differently? So really go back to those basics on mindset and clarity, understand how you're feeling now, what the triggers, and be able to move forwards from that. We had another one that somebody sent me, wondering how to do it well and make good choices. So hopefully today you've seen from the things I've shared, making that time to think is really important in that situation, because it allows you to step back and say what is going well, what's not going well, and how do I make those good choices in it for me, that are right for me, and able to move forwards. And then the final one was managing expectations when you're getting up to speed. As I said at the beginning, mismatch of expectations and lack of clarity is one of the biggest things I see go wrong in any kind of work transition. So I would encourage you to be really clear, a bit like Claire was, on what it is that you need, what it is that you want, what it is that you need, and be really clear on those expectations around what your assumptions are and what you're going to be doing and focusing on, and ask good questions to understand other people's expectations so you can see where there are mismatches that could trip you up, or feel really confident that you're going in the direction everybody's expecting you to, or that they're going to give you what you need. A 90-day plan is a great thing to do in that situation to manage expectations. Because if you're able to show what your 90-day plan is for this change, and we talk about 90-day plans in terms of new roles a lot, but actually I think they're super applicable to many changes that we go through. Returning from mat leave, for instance, you could totally have a 90-day plan for returning from mat leave. What is your plan to get up to speed, to transition well through this change? Align it with your manager. Communicate these things. People just don't communicate enough, and there are loads of assumptions. Communicate it, get alignment so that everybody's clear that on what you're doing, when you're going to do it by, and how you're managing the situation. It's also a great opportunity to show that you're being really proactive. And as I said, that's really noticeable and something that is obviously highly praised by managers and organizations in general. So hopefully that answers or builds a little bit on some of the work transitions mentioned at the beginning of today's webinar. I hope that was helpful. So if you don't have any more questions or reflections, you know where I am. You can book a call on my website. It's also via my LinkedIn profile, I think. Yeah, it is on my website through there. I hope that's been helpful. given you a few things to think about. Reach out anytime if you'd like to chat more via LinkedIn, email, website. And I hope you have a lovely afternoon. All the best with your work transitions. Take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.